Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one media analysis of the massive geopolitical standoff between the US and Iran. We're going to look at the strategy, the so-called red lines, and what this source claims is the real prize at the end of the day. All right, so let's get right to the core of this analysis. The whole argument boils down to this. This isn't just a simple disagreement. Nope, it's a high-stakes game of pressure, a game of leverage. It's all about who can control the situation, who can push the hardest, and really, who's going to be the one to blink first. So here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with the standoff itself, then get into the two non-negotiable red lines. After that, we'll talk about how to spot real talks versus just political theater, look at the endgame strategy, and finally, what this is really all about, the oil.
Okay, so first things first. The way this analysis sets it up, it's basically a massive test of will. Every move, every statement, every little gesture, it's all a piece in a much, much bigger game.
And it all really comes down to this one question. Who's going to blink first? The analysis calls this a battle for the escalation ladder. Picture a really shaky ladder where every step up is a bigger risk. You go from sanctions to threats to who knows what. And the thing is, neither side wants to climb higher, but they really don't want to be the one to climb back down, because backing down, that looks like weakness. So they're just stuck there in this super tense standoff, and everyone is watching.
All right, so in a standoff like this, what are the absolute deal breakers? According to this source, for the US, it all comes down to two major red lines. And these 2 points, they shape everything.
Red line number one is, you guessed it, the nuclear program. The analysis argues that for Iran, getting a nuke is like the ultimate insurance policy. It's their ticket to being untouchable. But for the US, it's a total non-starter, a capability that just cannot be allowed under any circumstance. You basically got an immovable object hitting an unstoppable force.
And that brings us to the second red line, the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this isn't just some shipping lane. The source calls it the artery of the global economy. And the fear is, if Iran gets control over it, they could literally hold the entire world hostage by choking off the energy supply. Okay, so the stakes are obviously sky high. But how can you possibly tell if anyone is making real progress? This analysis says, well, a lot of what you see on the news, it's just theater.
So that's the big question, right? Are these negotiations for real, or is it all just a big tactic to buy more time? The source actually lays out a way to cut through all the noise, all the threats and the promises, so you can try to figure out what's really going on.
So how do you tell the difference? Well, according to this analysis, you've got to watch what they do, not what they say. You've got two columns here. On one side, you have signs of genuine talks, people actually meeting in person, the Strait of Hormuz opening up, real, verifiable limits on the nuclear stuff. But on the other side, that's when you see stalling, flat out refusing to show up to meetings, and more attacks by proxy groups. That, according to this view, is how you know they're just buying time.
And to really drive this point home about political theater, the speaker brings up quotes like this one. I mean, you hear that, and it sounds like war is right around the corner, right?
But here's the key takeaway from the analysis. This kind of talk is seen as a negotiating tactic. It's not a real plan. It's all part of that leverage game we talked about. It's designed to create pressure, to show you mean business, but it's not meant to be taken literally. The bottom line here is, watch what they do, not what they say. Okay, so if all that is just talk, what's the actual strategy? This brings us to what the speaker thinks is really going on behind the scenes with the US approach.
The analysis lays out this three-step pressure playbook. First, you push your enemy to the absolute brink. Second, you use that pressure to separate the different factions inside their own government. And third, you figure out which of those factions actually wants to make a deal. See? The goal isn't a direct fight. It's to create cracks from the inside.
And why do it this way? Well, the argument is pretty stark. You can't negotiate with hardliners who are on a religious jihad. You can only make a real deal with the people who, to put it simply, want to live. So the whole strategy is about isolating the extremists and giving the more pragmatic folks a reason to come to the table.
All right, so we've talked about tactics and strategy, but now we get to the final piece of the puzzle. The analysis zooms way out to show us what it claims this is really all about. And it's bigger than just nuclear weapons or regional politics.
According to this source, if you're only focused on Iran's government or its nuclear ambitions, you're missing the point. This isn't just some regional squabble. No, this is about something that affects the entire world. And this really puts it into perspective. Just look at the Strait of Hormuz. It's not just a vital trade route, it's the global choke point for oil.
If you control that tiny strip of water, you essentially have a hand on the switch for the world's economy.
And that's the bottom line of this entire analysis. This is about who controls the world's energy future. That's the real prize. Everything else, it's all part of the game to win that prize.
So, this is where it all comes together. Those two red lines we talked about, a nuclear-capable Iran and control over the Strait of Hormuz, the source concludes that for the U.S., allowing a strong Iran to have both is simply not an option. It's seen as a direct threat to the entire global economic system.
So, there you have it. That's the breakdown of this one particular analysis. It paints a picture of a complex conflict as really a raw game of leverage over resources. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. If this is right, if huge geopolitical conflicts are really driven by who controls what does that mean for the future of international diplomacy?